Thank you.
Well, seeing the Watts Prophet's picture in the Museum of Art, the Met, it made me think about me being invited to Egypt and having always really been fascinated with Egypt. Um, always looked at it as a black civilization. I never was confused about that, even before they say they had Dr. Diop, and then I think it's Diop, can't think. But when they found out, that it was a black civilization. And when I was in Egypt, I didn't take the tours that everyone took. I never went to the pyramids because I always looked at them as robbing graves of my ancestors, disturbing their peace. They are places where they were placed to rest for eternity. And so I really did. While I was in Egypt, I stayed around the town of Cairo. And then I went into the desert to the Pope's monastery. I think it was named St. Peshoy's monastery. If I'm not mistaken, my memory is not as well as it used to be. But when I went there, I got a really chance to wander through the desert of Egypt and to get the feeling of Egypt. I was alone. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't speak the language, except some of the priests did. And so it was a kind of a joyous trip to me. I got a chance to go in to churches and caves, where we would spend I didn't, but then your initiation, you would spend the night in this cave. And this cave had the sarcophagus, so the grave of Saint Bashoy, which was the name of the monastery. Well, that pope was buried there. His coffin was sitting right in this cave, but the cave was a church. And so I asked questions. I was very curious. I noticed on his coffin there was like a mailbox slot, and I kept looking at it, and I finally asked the priest who was taking me around, "What is that mailbox-like slot on the Pope's coffin?" He said, "Well, he used to, if you came to visit here, if you stuck your hand in there and you was a good person, he would touch your hand. But if you was a bad person, he would not touch your hand." So he did that for years, but one day the president came of Egypt, whoever the president was, and he asked the same question I asked, what was the slot for? And the Pope told him that, if you're a good man and you put your hand in there, and, it will touch your hand. So the president said, "Let me put my hand in," and he put his hand in, and nothing touched his hand. So he got real upset. And, he was the president, so he had a lot of sway of what happened with the church and stuff. So when he left, the Pope went to the coffin and told Father Pashoy, "Don't you ever put your hand out again for nothing, good or bad." And from then on, they stopped people from going there. But that was just one of the little stories I saw out in the desert, and I got a chance to be in that monastery and in that cave and in that little church for quite a while. So that was really I learned a lot about Egypt and the feeling there. And I didn't have anybody to influence me. I was staying with the Pope. The Pope of Egypt invited me. He's the one who called here. He had heard about my work here in Los Angeles with the Ethiopian church. And he also wanted me to work with the Coptic church. So that's why he had one of his priests contact me and ask me. In fact, he called me, Pope Shenouda, and asked me to come to Egypt. And he said he would have everything arranged, and he did. And I actually stayed in his apartment. One of his relatives cooked his dinner, was in charge of his meals. And when I was there, he also cooked for me and him. So it was really a very exciting experience, and to meet with a giant spiritual man like that was quite an experience. My first encounter with him, when I actually got a chance to sit down with him for the first time, he asked me how did I like the culture and the people of Egypt since I've been here. What do I think about them? I said, well, I think I really like the culture of Egypt, and I never judge people. I like, the people but I never judge them. I don't know them that way. He said, you are not truthful. And I said, I was kind of stunned. I said, well, Your Eminence, what do you mean? I'm not honest. He said, you said you didn't judge people. I said, that's right, I don't. He said, well, that's not true. You're judging me right now just like I'm judging you. People constantly judge, but everybody says they don't. He says the judgment becomes damaging when you make it real, but it's judgment in your mind. You would not be a wise man if you didn't judge people. So I was kind of shocked, but that was my first encounter with him. And I got a chance to sit with him several other times. He tried all kinds of little tricks on me, testing me. I remember one time, I think it was a big holiday because every priest in and around Cairo and around Egypt came to his monastery, and they came on big buses full of priests, and they was coming day and day, all day. He would sit on this big palace-like porch, and they would all come up to me. He'd sit there and he'd give them some candy and bless them, and they would move. He just did it all day, all day, all day. And so one day I saw a priest that I knew in America. And so he came up, we said, you know him? I said, yes, I do. So we brought the priest who later came to California. We brought him up and we went inside. So the Pope had his assistant with him. And we all sat down and started talking about LA and stuff. And so the Pope said to his assistant, bring me that. And the assistant brought him a big bundle of money. And he took it and he said, yes, I've heard about your work a lot in Los Angeles and stuff, and here is some money for your church and your members to take back to America. And so I took it in my hand, and then I said, sir, I didn't come to Egypt for money. I came here to learn and to find out what I could do and what help I could need. I don't want your money. To make a long story short, after the Pope left, the other priest who was there, he said, if you'd have taken that money, you would have changed your whole character with him. But when you didn't take that money, he was very proud of you. And, so those are some of the experiences I had in Egypt. And now I'm still back at Egypt. It's become a part of my life. It's been a part. I've always liked cats like Sun Ra because I ran with cats like that. Don Sherry and Arnett and cats like that. So we were always, space is the place. Like that's Sun Ra's moniker. But Egypt is becoming and for young people, it's really a place, and especially if they have African descent, it's a place for them to start the beginning of civilization. And from there, they can see all of the great things that we have done, reinvestigated, and hopefully re-implemented in many ways. So they can look back at the beginning and see where we made our mistake to where we got here today. And maybe we can reconstruct that as African people and African minds and African spirits, African ancestral voices. But we got to hear our own voice, and that's what's so good about rap again. It gives you your own voice. It defines your reality. And not because the book says this is the word for that. We don't dig that. This is the word I got for that. It's what I think now. Free in my mind to be me, to interpret my destiny, to interpret my situation, to interpret my now. This is what we do when we rap frees the mind again. I keep saying that, because it's something that no one can stop. And if those minds carry the truth, anywhere there's a brain, there's the truth. What can I say? That's just my little thing about Egypt and how I got there. And some of the little experiences I had.
What is energy?
I can't define energy other than it's a force, it's a rhythm, that's really hard to define for me, what energy is. But I think it's physical, mental, and spiritual. I do know that. It's all.
Have you experienced something where you're like, it had to be nothing other than an exhibit of spiritual ancestors, God, energy, where you felt like things were moving without you, doing it almost, where that spiritual was really a big driving force in what was actually happening in your reality?
Well, I always tried to be real. I always tried to go with what I was feeling. And it got so bad with me, feeling till when I was in the crazy house, I went to the doctor and I asked him how to kill my feelings. And he was the one who woke me up. That feeling was your death. He told me, he said, son, you don't want to kill your feeling. He said, the more you feel, the deeper you feel, is the deeper and the more profound you are. He said, you want to learn to live with your feelings and to control them. And that was one of the greatest advices, that I had. But I always followed my feeling. I always knew it was that, not just the fists and all that. I knew that feeling had a big part of what I was dealing with. I did what I felt. Even if I was afraid, I did what I felt.
Okay. Um, I actually had a question too. What are all of the worst things you've ever seen happen to our people of melanin or learned from history? Like the real things that was done to us that we may not even know or acknowledge in the way that we should. And then I have another question to follow that one up.
The worst thing that was done to us is the social engineering of making us hate ourselves, making us hate being black, making us hate each other, the destruction of our families, the destruction of our religions, destruction of our children. You see, I come from that pivotal generation. What I mean by that is when you see in those books those old slave women, how they dressed, with them wooden houses that set up off the ground. Well, I sat on those type of porches. I saw those same faces. They were my uncles, cousins, and relatives because we lived around each other then. And I know how they smelled. I know I was a part of that going out generation. And we were the new ones that supposedly came in. Richard and I and the Watts Prophets are both about the same age. Both of us didn't learn Creole because at that time, our grandmothers who really ran things felt that we needed to learn to speak good English so that we could get good jobs and survive. Because, being Creole was two-sided. Blacks didn't want us and whites didn't either, so we chose excellence and moved on. Many of us. So that's the worst thing, is the destruction of our families and self-hate. They cultivated that. And it's complete now because they have complete control of our image all over the world. People don't know African Americans. They know Snoop Dogg and those guys. They don't know anything about the real African American and all that they have been through. But self-hate is the worst thing that they've done to us. They cultivated that and engineered it to its finest.
And then a follow up I had was, what is the best things you've ever seen either done for our people or that we've done ourselves?
Well, the best thing is just to have survived this constant humiliation, degradation, pain, suffering. It's been constant. We haven't had it good here. Everything we built up, like those towns, like the town they destroyed in Oklahoma. There was 80 of those towns, and you never know how many of us were murdered, and all the things that happened to us. And it's been constant. And in the last 50 or 60, 70 years, the attack on black youth has been the most vicious. And they have made them destroy their own communities with control of their image. They create the image through media. And, everybody's affected by media, especially young people. So those are some of the things that I see that. Did you ask me what that was good?
Mm-hmm.
Survival. Just us surviving was the greatest feat. All that we have been against. And we survive it with a smile. We pat our feet. We have learned to swing the blues. If we hadn't learned to swing the blues, we wouldn't be here, buddy. If we didn't learn to work like an animal all week on the farm for the white man, and then Saturday give us a little drink and some music and a guitar, and we start swinging the blues, dancing to pain. Because if we didn't learn how to swing it, we couldn't have made it. So, us swinging the blues was one of the things that I always admired. No matter how hard it was, we always patted our feet.
What was your experience like touring?
Our tours were always wonderful. We never had a bad presentation. With young or old, I can't remember the Watts Prophets ever not getting a standing ovation at the end of our presentation, whether it was amongst the young or the old. And when you tour, you become really polished, because you're doing your performance every night before an audience that's drawing from you, but also giving you something back. So it's like you're rehearsing every day, and you get sharper and sharper. If you look at some of our shows, we're right on the money, on time with our words and our sayings, because we're doing them every night. But what's so wonderful about rap is the background of you listen to our stuff may change, because the background was always free to change from what was going on up in the lead poet. There was no lead poet. Whichever one, if we didn't talk about upstaging, we didn't believe in that. You just say what you want to say and add to what I'm saying, hopefully. Those were just getting sharper and sharper and touching more different type of people all over America. College students. And like I said, we always, when we would come into a town, to a college, we would always try to find the black community and hook them to our presentation in some way. Introduce that community, bring some of their musicians. We always tried to include them in our performance, the people who live there. So touring was really wonderful for us. But the Watts Prophets really were street poets. It didn't make any difference where our show was. In the bathroom, standing on the corner, eating at a table, standing in a line. Wherever the world was our stage. We did poetry everywhere we were. In fact, we did poetry all across America. We had to get from LA to Chicago to Jesse Jackson's, what's her name had died, Cannonball Adderley. And Quincy Jones invited us to do a poem, and we did the poem, so he was going to have somebody else do it. We said we would like to do it, so he said, come on. So we had an old raggedy car and our first book, and not enough money to get across country to eat and not get gas and all that. And the car had a bad transmission. We knew we weren't going to make it. So we hit the road, our manager and me, Richard and Otis. And I think we got somewhere halfway. And how we were getting across country, we would go into a town and we would find the black folks and white folks, and we would just get out and start selling our book. And that's how we were making money to get across the country. But finally, the transmission broke and we had to get enough money to get a transmission. So we left the car at this place to get this transmission started, and we started walking through this town. I can't remember where we were. And we actually sold enough books to get this transmission. It wasn't thousands of dollars and stuff at that time. So then we had to get money for a hotel. We had to get money to eat. But we did it with these books. Then when we got to Jesse Jackson's thing, I forgot what he called it, we sold a lot of books because it was a big thing. I never saw that many people together. And, what was the question again?
Well, it's just your experience touring, but you started touching on some other stuff, like your experiences. Like
No, but the baddest experience I had was in South Carolina. We went on stage, and first of all, they had told the black community, I guess they put us in a religious category, and they said, these guys are talking about their prophets, and they curse. And somehow they got that to the black preachers. And so they told the black community, don't go see us. But a few did. But during our performance, we had a chart for our lighting for each poem. And, we gave them our chart, what to do on each poem. And we was finding ourselves in the middle of a poem in the dark. Lights going on and off. Strobe lights coming on. And it just ruined our presentation. So after the show, we saw this brother. He was at the board that controlled all the lighting and stuff. And so we said to him, bruh, what happened? How come the lights was going out on us and too soon and this and that? He said, brother, I'm not a light, man. We said, what? He said, I'm the janitor here, man, and they just told me that I could do the lights tonight. He said, what? He said, man, I didn't know what I was doing.
What year was it?
I can't remember. It was in the 90s, I believe. I'm not sure. But,
why was the 90s so important for hip-hop and rap, rather?
Well, it was just really blooming. It had been growing, but in the 90s it just really popped, And the 90s was an exciting period. You know my poem, When the 90s Came?
Yeah.
I tried to change my negative social outlook. It's maybe this world really, really wasn't by crooks. On close inspection, I saw that justice and morality was no longer reality in most men's mentality. Racism was well. Malcolm had been reduced to a commercial X and the Panthers to a movie when the 90s came. See, I wrote that way back there, and then they did the Panther movie.
It's profit.
Yeah. So when you go to the Panthers now, you get that movie. You don't get the history of the Black Panthers.
How did you guys do marketing back in the day? Like, how did that work?
Well, usually the colleges, we did residencies, a lot of residencies. Usually the colleges would do a lot of PR. The record company would do a minimum amount of PR. And it was just sort of word of mouth for the Watts Prophets. People just, our poetry, I guess, it lived in people's minds, and they passed it around. It was just like it did its own thing. With like a disease, it just caught on wherever it was at in some way. But we didn't do a lot of advertising. But we did a lot of presentations everywhere. Anywhere people would let us do a poem, we did one. Street poets, period. And the world was our stage.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's kind of mystical how I continued to go around the world. You know, we only got to go to Europe twice.
Where all did you go?
England and Amsterdam, Holland.
Well, I'm saying like internationally, like throughout your journey, like what countries, like have you touched every part of the world or?
Austria, England, and Amsterdam, Holland. And we were well received, but we never got invited back.
Have you ever did the Watts Prophets ever do anything in Africa?
No, never.
Why is that?
We were invited to the first major African conference. Us and the Horace Tapscott Band. When this was the first big African festival. And we all had our passports and everybody was ready. And we were the first African Americans being invited. And suddenly, it was cut off. They say they lost all of Horace's Tapscott's information. And the lady, she was a black artist who was over it. Samela Lewis was her name. She just cut the Watts Prophets out. And they picked other poets in the community. But we were the first chosen.
Why though?
We have no idea. That always happened to us, Jalen. At that time, they had record scouts. The Watts Prophets were the first people to bring poetry into clubs. So these record scouts would come to hear about us and come to the club and see us. And they would be, so excited. They'd come backstage. Brother, what's your name? What's your number? Can I talk to you? Can you come to my office Monday, etc.? They would be so excited. That excitement would last for about 2 weeks. And then suddenly everything changed. They wouldn't want to answer our calls anymore. They seemed to want to lose contact with us. And that we were discovered by every major record company. Some of their scouts at one time or another approached us. But suddenly, it would just stop. We would never know why. Nobody would ever tell us why. The only person that I told you before was honest with us was Stevie Wonder. He told us, he saw that we were asking for help in the industry. Because we'd asked every great artist that we met, black, give us a hand. And Stevie just said, bruh, I can't help you guys. And, he let us know, don't ask me why, but I can't help you guys. But he did put our name on his album, Songs in the Key of Life. That's contributing some background voices that he put on there. So, that wasn't nothing unusual for us. Mysteriously, nothing, everything would just shut down.
So there must be some type of like industry secret that they're holding that we don't know about, whether that's like the FBI with that meeting with DJ Quick, when that happened and you walked out that's not normal, especially for somebody to say, I can't tell you why, but I feel empathetic enough to at least tell you. That means that there's some type of higher force above them that they're afraid of.
And yes, we understood that they burned our workshop down. Now I don't know what agency that was the FBI. So I don't know if they would continue to follow us today because we saw traces of those type of things all through our career. But we had an agent who come from a well-known family, I guess, of agents, and he was connected up. And we were taken out of the black community, basically. We did mostly colleges and not always black colleges. We never did a black college at all. Out of the 125, we never did one.
So it's almost not like the music didn't outcast you guys. It was hip hop that outcasted you guys in particular. Because if you're saying you was able to go to different colleges and stuff like that, that means you were taking rap and influencing like country music, R&B, other genres essentially. Because that's what happens when you get took out of a black community. So, it must have been some type of construct in hip hop. Something in that meeting.
It was control of the voice. It was control of the image of hip hop. That's all it could ever be, is an image. Music has been around. Rap been around. Hip hop is the only new thing that came about.
But they knew by keeping you out, that kept you away from the money as well. Which is why I feel like it was purposeful. And I don't know what. It's a trace. If you look at it too, especially when you got discharged, when he told you you'll never be successful in America again.
That's right.
That was, when you were like 19, 20?
I was 19 years old.
So it's something tracing back that the government has a very strict control over our culture, and we know it. We just don't want to step on their toes.
Well, that's why you got cats like Kendrick Lamar talking in parable. But he ain't really talking in parable. I hear what he's saying. You know? But you can interpret it any kind of way you want to interpret it. Like, like I told you, what they talk about. You would love a guy like Mozzie. Yes, I do. Because I know that he has a genuine love of black people. He may be crazy. He may do this and that. But I know he, in his heart, he want to see something greater for our people, period.
So it's on this new generation of rappers not being scared to use their voice.
That's right.
Actually standing up for it.
For the positive. Hook up to the positive tip. Take time to think on how to think.